Michael spent 6 years telling Naomi that as an orphan, she was invisible, a woman the world would never come looking for. He was right about one thing. Nobody came looking for her. But on a cold, rainy night on the New York City subway, the most dangerous man in the city sat down beside her and looked at her like she was the only thing in the room worth seeing. The A train cut through the dark belly of New York City like a blade through silence. Naomi sat pressed against the far left corner of the subway seat, her slim body curled into itself like she was trying to disappear. Her burgundy knitted sweater was damp from the rain, and her black handbag sat clutched tight in her lap. Her fingers wrapped around it so hard her knuckles had gone pale. She didn't look like a woman going home. She looked like a woman running for her life. And the harsh subway lights caught the damage on her face. A deep purple bruise blooming around her left eye, and thin, jagged cuts across her cheek from the cold metal of Michael's ring. She kept her head slightly down, her thick, natural coils falling loose and damp around her oval face, shielding her from the eyes of strangers. Some passengers glanced at her, their eyes soft with pity for just a second, before they looked away. They always looked away. And that was exactly what Michael Williams had counted on for 6 long years. He had built her prison carefully, brick by brick, using the one thing she had no defense against: her loneliness. Naomi was an orphan, no mother, no father, no siblings. No one to call in the middle of the night when his hands became weapons. Meant he had whispered it into her ear so many times it had become the only truth she knew. You have nobody, Naomi. You are nothing, and nothing cannot be saved. Her heart was slamming against her ribs as the train rattled deeper into the tunnel. Every time the doors hissed open at a stop, her breath caught in her throat. She expected to see him. That broad, heavy frame filling the doorway, dark eyes burning with the kind of rage that had no bottom. She was a slim, petite woman with warm, deep brown skin, large, expressive eyes, and a face that was built for joy. High cheekbones, full lips, a quiet beauty that 6 years of Michael Williams had not been able to fully destroy. But tonight she felt like a hollow shell. She didn't know exactly where she was going. She only knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was never going back, and the carriage was nearly empty. Just the low hum of the fluorescent lights above and the steady clacking of the tracks below. Naomi stared straight ahead, her lips slightly parted, her chest rising and falling in shallow, uneven breaths. Don't panic. Just breathe. Just keep moving. She had been on that train for 20 minutes, and every single one of those minutes had felt like a countdown to something she couldn't name. Then, the air changed. It didn't happen loudly. There was no announcement, no dramatic shift in the lights. It was subtle. Like the temperature in the carriage dropped by 2 degrees and every molecule of oxygen pulled back to make room for something else entirely. A scent reached her first. Dark, rich, and sharp, like black oud wood and cold steel. It was nothing like the damp coats and fast food smell of the subway. It was the kind of scent that belonged in a locked room where serious men made serious decisions. Naomi's breath slowed. Don't look. Don't draw attention. Just stare straight ahead. But something would not let her listen to her own warning. She turned her head, just slightly, and her breath stopped completely. He had not been there a moment ago. She was certain of that. But now, sitting directly beside her, was a man who looked like he had been carved from something harder than bone. Sung Hyun. He was tall even sitting down, his long, lean frame filling the space beside her with a quiet, controlled dominance that made the seat feel smaller. He wore a black tailored suit that sat on his body like it had been sewn onto him, crisp white shirt beneath it. The top button opened just enough to reveal the edge of dark ink crawling up the base of his neck. A Patek Philippe watch gleamed cold and silver on his left wrist. His jet-black hair was swept back, sharp and clean. His face was all angles, a jaw that could cut glass, narrow dark eyes that moved with the slow, focused precision of a man who missed absolutely nothing. He wasn't looking around the carriage like a normal passenger. He was watching it. One hand rested on his knee, and across the back of that hand, dark dragon tattoos shifted under the light like they were breathing. Naomi felt her pulse jump straight to her throat. He is not a normal man. Every instinct she had, the same instincts that had kept her alive for 6 years inside Michael's house, was screaming one thing loud and clear. This man is dangerous. When she gripped her handbag tighter and forced her eyes back to the window across from her, her own reflection stared back, bruised, broken, frightened. Park Sung Hyun did not speak. He did not look at her with pity like the other passengers had. He did not look away either. He simply sat there, perfectly, unnaturally still, like a man who had never once in his life been afraid of anything. And somehow, impossibly, that stillness was the most terrifying thing Naomi had ever felt. The train rattled on through the dark, and neither of them said a word. The A-train screeched to a grinding halt at 42nd Street Station. The sound tore through the quiet carriage like a scream, metal against metal, sharp and ugly. Naomi flinched at the noise, her whole body pulling tighter into itself. She looked out the window, expecting nothing but the familiar, dirty yellow glow of the platform lights. What she saw instead made her blood run cold. He was there. Michael Williams stood on the platform like he owned it, his broad, heavy frame unmistakable, even through the rain-streaked glass. He was wearing his dark hoodie, his heavy boots, his hands shoved into his pockets. But his eyes, those dark, burning eyes, were already moving, already searching. He didn't just follow me, he predicted me. Naomi's whole body went rigid. Her fingers locked around her handbag so hard the leather creased. She pressed herself back against the seat, as if the plastic and metal behind her could somehow swallow her whole. Don't let him see you. Don't move. Don't breathe. But it was already too late. Michael's eyes found the window, found her face, and in the moment they did, he smiled. Slow, ugly. The smile of a man who had never once believed she could actually leave. He started moving toward the doors. Those heavy boots hit the concrete with a dull, thudding rhythm, steady and unhurried, because he had never had to rush for her before. She had always been right where he left her. Naomi shot to her feet. Her slim frame swayed with the stillness of the stopped train. She looked at the doors. She looked back down the carriage. Her mind was spinning so fast it felt like it was coming apart. Where do I go? Where do I go? Where do I? If you run, a voice said quietly, he will catch you. Naomi froze. She turned slowly. Park Sung Hyun had not moved from his seat. He was still perfectly still, one hand resting on his knee, dark eyes lifted to her face with that same calm, focused intensity that made the air feel thick. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't even turned his body fully toward her. He spoke the way a man speaks when he has never once needed to repeat himself. He is standing at those doors because he believes you have nowhere else to go, Park Sung Hyun said, his voice low and even, each word landing with a quiet, deliberate weight. If you walk off this train alone tonight, you are walking back into that cage. And this time, his eyes dropped for just a moment to the bruise around her eye. He will make sure the door never opens again. Naomi stared at him. Every rational thought she had told her to be afraid of this man. The tattoos, the suit, the cold, unreadable eyes, the way the entire carriage seemed to bend around his presence like light around a dark star. He is dangerous. Yet you do not know him. Do not trust him. But Michael was already at the doors, and Park Sung Hyun was already rising. He unfolded from that seat with a slow, fluid grace, his full height filling the space above her, his black suit jacket falling perfectly back into place without him even touching it. He didn't ask for her permission. He didn't wait for her answer. He simply stepped into the aisle ahead of her and created a path, calm, certain, and absolute, like a man who had already decided how this night was going to end. The doors hissed open, and the cold New York night hit Naomi like a wall of ice. The rain was falling harder now, sharp and relentless against the platform. It soaked through her burgundy sweater in seconds, her natural coils flattening against her face. But she barely felt the cold, not because Michael was 3 feet away. Naomi. His voice was low, controlled, that particular kind of quiet that she had learned to fear more than his shouting. Come here, right now. We are going home. She didn't move. Michael's jaw tightened. He took 1 step forward, his hand reaching for her arm. Park Sung Hyun stepped between them. He didn't shout. He didn't raise his hands. He simply placed himself in that space, tall, still, and immovable, like a wall that had always been there. 1 hand rested loosely at his side. His dark eyes settled on Michael with an expression that had no heat in it at all. That was what made it so frightening. There was no anger, no warning, just a cold, absolute certainty. The look of a man who had ended far worse situations than this one before breakfast. Michael stopped. And for the first time in 6 years, Naomi watched Michael Williams hesitate. He looked up at Park Sung Hyun, at the sharp, angular face, at the dragon tattoos crawling up his neck, at the Patek Philippe watch catching the rain, at the dark eyes that held not even a flicker of fear. That is my wife, Michael said. His voice came out smaller than he intended. Step aside. This has nothing to do with you. Park Sung Hyun looked at his watch, slowly, deliberately, as if Michael Williams was a minor interruption in an otherwise unremarkable evening. She does not look like she wants to go with you, he said quietly. Then his dark eyes lifted back to Michael's face. And I have a very low tolerance for men who put their hands on things that do not belong to them. Michael's chest puffed. She is an orphan, you hear me? She has got nobody. Nobody in this entire city is coming for her. Park Sung Hyun took 1 single step forward, just 1, and Michael took 2 steps back without even realizing he had moved. She is standing beside me, Park Sung Hyun said, his voice dropping to just above a whisper, which somehow made it louder than anything else on that platform. That means she is no longer alone, and if you take 1 more step toward her, I will make sure you never take another step again. The rain filled the silence between them. Michael looked at the tattoos on those hands, looked at those eyes, and understood, in the way that all small men eventually understand when they are standing in front of something genuinely dangerous, that he had already lost. He backed away, then turned, then walked fast toward the station exit, his heavy boots no longer sounding quite so certain on the wet concrete. Naomi stood in the rain, shaking, not entirely from the cold. She looked up at the man beside her, at his sharp profile against the dark Manhattan skyline. Rain caught the edge of his jaw, ran down the dragon tattoos on his neck, and dripped from the sleeve of a suit that probably cost more than 6 months of her rent. Why? She whispered. Why did you do that? Park Sung Hyun looked down at her, and for just 1 moment, just one, something shifted behind those dark, focused eyes. Not warmth exactly, but something close to it. A sleek black car rolled silently to the curb behind him. "Because," he said simply, "I want to see what you become when you finally stop running." He turned toward the car, and when after one breath, one single moment of standing alone in the rain in the middle of New York City with nowhere to go, Naomi followed him. The black car moved through the wet New York City streets like a shadow. Naomi sat in the back seat, her slim body swallowed by the soft black leather. The city lights streaked past the tinted windows in long ribbons of gold and red, beautiful and distant, like a world that belonged to someone else entirely. The rain drummed steadily against the roof above her head. She was warm for the first time all night. She was also terrified. Park Sung Hyun sat beside her, not close, but present. The way a mountain is present. You don't have to touch it to feel it. He had not spoken since they got into the car. He simply sat with one arm resting against the door, his dark eyes tracking the city outside with that same slow, focused calm that seemed to be his only setting. Naomi stared at her hands in her lap. Who is this man? What did I just do? Where is he taking me? The questions were piling up fast, but her body was too exhausted to match them with panic. 6 years of surviving Michael Williams had used up every reserve she had. Right now, all she could do was sit, breathe, and trust the fragile, irrational feeling in her chest that said, "You are safer here than you have been in 6 years." The car slowed. Naomi looked up, and her breath caught. Rising straight ahead of them, cutting dark and sharp against the rainy Manhattan skyline, was a tower of black glass. It didn't announce itself the way most New York buildings did. No bright lobby, no flashy signage. It simply stood there, a tall and absolute, like it had decided long ago that it didn't need to impress anyone. A small silver plate beside the entrance read simply, "The Black Tower." The car stopped. A man in a sharp, dark suit appeared at the door before the engine had even fully cut. Then another, and another, moving with a quiet, military precision that told Naomi everything she needed to know. These are not security guards. These are soldiers. Park Sung Hyun stepped out first, then turned and waited, not impatiently, just waited, as Naomi climbed out behind him. The rain had slowed to a fine mist now, curling soft and cold around the base of the building. She followed him inside. The private elevator opened directly into the penthouse. Naomi stepped out and stopped. The space in front of her was enormous. Charcoal walls, polished concrete floors, furniture in deep blacks and dark grays, clean and precise as a blueprint. Floor-to-ceiling windows ran the full length of the far wall, showing all of Manhattan spread out below like a circuit board lit up in the dark. It was stunning. It was also nothing like a home. This is not where a man rests, Naomi thought, her eyes moving slowly across the room. This is where a man rules. Figures stood at the edges of the space, still, alert, positioned. Their eyes moved, but their bodies didn't. Naomi counted 4 before she stopped counting. "This isn't an apartment," she said quietly. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "No," Park Sung Hyun replied, shrugging his black suit jacket from his shoulders and handing it to a waiting aide without looking. He stood now in his white dress shirt, sleeves still down, the dark dragon tattoos just visible above his collar. "It is the center of operations." He moved to a bar of raw, dark stone along the far wall and poured 2 glasses of Japanese whiskey, Yamazaki 18, amber and clean. He held one out toward her. Naomi crossed the room slowly and took it. The glass was cool against her fingers. She looked at his hands as she took it, at the dragon tattoos across his knuckles, at the faint old scars beneath the ink that no tailored suit could fully hide. This man has been in places I cannot imagine. You pulled me out of that station, she said carefully. You put me in your car. You brought me here. She looked up at him. Why? Park Sung Hyun lifted his own glass, took one slow sip, set it down. You wanted to escape a man who used your loneliness as a weapon, he said. And to do that, you needed to step into a world where loneliness is not a weakness. He looked at her steadily. It is a qualification. Naomi felt something move in her chest. Not comfort exactly. Something sharper than that. She looked around the penthouse again, at the soldiers in the shadows, at the city laid out 30 floors below, at the man standing in front of her who the whole room seemed to organize itself around without him asking. She had escaped Michael Williams tonight. But she had not escaped danger. She had simply traded one world for another. And somehow, she thought, wrapping both hands around the cool glass, this one feels less like a cage. The guest suite was at the far end of a long, silent hallway. It was large and spotlessly clean, dark wood furniture, crisp white bedding, soft, warm light. A woman in a neat uniform had already left a tray on the dresser. Medical supplies, a tall glass of water, and a set of folded silk pajamas in deep navy blue. Naomi stood in the center of the room for a long moment, just stood there, letting the silence settle around her. Then she walked into the bathroom. It was all white marble and soft gold light. A floor-to-ceiling mirror ran the length of the wall above the sink. Naomi stopped in front of it and made herself look. Really look. The bruise around her left eye had deepened to a dark, angry purple. The cuts on her cheek were thin but jagged, the kind of marks a ring leaves when it is swung with intention. Her thick, natural coils were still damp, still loose around her face. Her burgundy sweater was rain-soaked and stretched. She looked like a woman who had been through a war. Because you have been, she told herself quietly. 6 years of it. Michael's voice drifted through her memory like smoke. Low, certain, poisonous. You have nobody. You are nothing, and nothing cannot be saved. She stared at her reflection for a long time, and then, slowly, carefully, she began to clean her wounds. Her fingers were steady as she worked, steadier than she expected, and as she stood there in that quiet white bathroom, 30 floors above the city that had never once felt like it belonged to her, something shifted. She looked at her own eyes in the mirror, large, deep brown, still standing after everything. He tried to erase you, she thought, and you are still here. She shed the damp burgundy sweater, let it fall to the floor, stepped out of her jeans. He stepped into the hot shower and stood under the water until the cold left her bones and the memory of Michael's hands felt a little further away. When she stepped out and dressed in the soft navy silk, she barely recognized herself, but in a different way than before. Not broken, different. She sat on the edge of the bed, looked at the closed door in front of her, and took one long, slow breath. She was not a ghost anymore. She was something just beginning. Morning came to the penthouse in shades of cold silver and gray. Naomi woke slowly, her body registering the unfamiliar softness of the bed, before her mind caught up with where she was. She lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling above her. White, clean. No sound of heavy boots in the hallway. No tension sitting thick in the air like a storm that never broke. He is not here, and the thought arrived quietly. And with it, something she had almost forgotten the feeling of. Safety. She rose, washed her face carefully around her bruises, and found the wardrobe along the far wall already stocked. Simple, clean clothes in her size. Dark jeans, a soft white long sleeve, white sneakers. She dressed slowly, ran her fingers through her coils, and took one breath before she opened the door. The penthouse was already awake. Figures moved quietly through the space, purposeful, precise, unhurried. Nobody looked at her with curiosity. Nobody looked at her with pity. They simply moved around her the way water moves around a stone, acknowledging her presence without making it a question. Naomi followed the sound of something rhythmic and steady. She found him in the gym. It was a long glass-walled room at the north end of the penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows showing all of Manhattan cold and gleaming in the morning light below. Park Sung Hyun stood at the center of the room in a black, sleeveless shirt and dark training pants, working a heavy bag with slow, deliberate strikes. Every movement was controlled, precise. Not the wild, furious energy that Michael used when he wanted to remind her what his hands could do. This was different. This was discipline. Naomi stood at the threshold and watched him without speaking. After a long moment, without turning around, Park Sung Hyun stopped. "You are looking at my hands," he said. His breathing was even, unbothered. He turned to face her, reaching for a white towel draped over the bar beside him. "That is what he taught you to do. Look for the hands. Watch for the moment they move." Naomi stepped into the room slowly. "Isn't that just survival?" "It is fear wearing the costume of survival," Park Sung Hyun said. He folded the towel and set it down. "There is a difference." He looked at her steadily. A person who moves through the world watching every hand that passes them is a person still living inside the cage, even when the door is open. Naomi was quiet for a moment. Michael used to say that power was simple. He said it belonged to whoever could hurt the other person the most. Park Sung Hyun's jaw tightened, just slightly, the only sign that the words landed somewhere. "Men like Michael measure everything," he said. "Size, volume, force." He moved toward the window and gestured for her to stand beside him. "Come here." Naomi crossed the room and stood at the glass. A New York City stretched out below them, massive, relentless, alive. 30 floors of steel and concrete and 8 million people moving through streets that never fully slept. "It is so big," Naomi said quietly. "I feel like a speck standing up here." "Good," Park Sung Hyun said. She looked at him. "To a man like Michael, size is everything," he said. "He needs to see you, needs to know where you are, needs to feel you beneath his hands to believe he still has power." He looked out at the city. But a speck cannot be found, cannot be tracked, cannot be struck. He turned to look at her directly. "Your invisibility was never your weakness, Naomi. It was always your greatest weapon. He just convinced you otherwise." Something moved through her chest, slow and warm and unfamiliar. For the next hour, the Park Sung Hyun did not teach her how to fight. He taught her how to stand. He corrected her posture, shoulders back, spine straight, chin level, not aggressive, not defensive, just present, certain. He made her walk the length of the room until her steps carried weight without effort. He made her hold eye contact in the mirror until she stopped flinching at her own reflection. "Your eyes are your first language," he told her, standing behind her as she faced the glass. "Before you speak a single word, your eyes have already told the room everything about how you see yourself." He met her gaze in the mirror. "Right now they are asking for permission to exist. That stops today." Naomi stared at her own reflection, at the bruise still dark around her eye, at the cut still raw on her cheek, at the slim, petite woman in the white long sleeve who had spent 6 years making herself smaller and smaller until she almost disappeared completely. "He tried to erase you. Stop letting him." She pulled her shoulders back, lifted her chin, and looked at herself. really looked, without flinching. That afternoon, the penthouse grew quiet. Naomi sat curled on the long, dark sofa, a warm cup of tea between both hands, watching Park Sung Hyun where he stood at the far window, still, silent, his eyes on the city below. The dragon tattoos on the back of his hands caught the pale afternoon light. "Can I ask you something?" she said. He didn't turn, but he didn't stop her either. "Why does any of this matter to you?" she asked. "I am nobody. I walked onto your train with nothing. I have no family, no money, no connections." She paused. So why?" Park Sung Hyun was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned from the window and walked toward her, slow, unhurried, and lowered himself into the chair across from her. He rested his arms on his knees and looked at her with those dark, focused eyes. "Being an orphan is not a lack," he said. "It is a specific kind of strength, the kind that is only built when there is nobody else to build it for you." He paused. "I protect you because I know exactly how heavy that feels." Naomi looked at him carefully. "You?" He reached for a cigarette from the table beside him, lit it slowly. Let the silence hold for a moment before he spoke again. "I grew up in the shadow of men exactly like Michael," he said. "Men who believed that power was something you took, from people who couldn't stop you." His eyes dropped to the tattoos on his wrists. "I was 10 years old when I understood that the only way to stop a monster was to become something the monster was afraid of." He looked back up at her. "I had no family, no protection. I built everything you see in this building, piece by piece, with nothing but time and the decision that I would never be small again." The room was very quiet. Naomi felt her throat tighten. "He didn't just hit me," she said softly. "He tried to make me believe I deserved it, that the reason nobody came for me was because I wasn't worth coming for." Park Sung Hyun looked at her with an expression that was not quite soft, but was the closest thing to it she had seen on his face. "He lied," he said simply. And soon. He will understand the full cost of that lie." Naomi looked at him across the quiet room, and for the first time in 6 years, she believed someone. The afternoon light had barely faded from the penthouse windows when everything changed. Park Sung Hyun was at his obsidian desk, 3 screens open in front of him, his dark eyes moving across the data with quiet, focused intensity. Naomi sat on the sofa nearby, her warm cup of tea long gone cold, watching the city below shift from gray afternoon into the first amber glow of evening. It felt almost peaceful. Almost. "He is moving," Park Sung Hyun said quietly. Naomi looked up. He wasn't looking at her. His eyes were fixed on one of the screens, a live feed from a security camera somewhere in the streets below. His jaw was set. His expression was unreadable. Michael?" she asked. "He contacted the Vega Syndicate this afternoon," Park Sung Hyun said, his voice carrying the same calm steadiness it always did, like nothing in the world could rush him. "A Brooklyn-based crew, dangerous enough to feel confident, not dangerous enough to know better." He leaned back slowly in his chair. "He has been offering them information, police files, safe house locations, everything he had access to through his connections, all of it, just to get one thing." Naomi's stomach tightened. "Me." "You," Park Sung Hyun confirmed. He looked at her then, directly, steadily. "He also bribed one of the building's lower-level security guards, a man named Curtis. He has already been removed." His dark eyes held hers. "They are on their way up." The room shifted, and the quiet figures at the edges of the penthouse were suddenly no longer quiet. They moved, smooth, fast, and absolutely silent, taking positions around the room with a precision that made Naomi's breath catch. Weapons appeared from places she hadn't even known to look. Within 30 seconds, the entire penthouse had transformed, from a residence into a fortress. Naomi stood up slowly from the sofa. Her heart was hammering. She could feel it in her throat, her fingertips, the backs of her knees. Every instinct she had was screaming at her to find a corner, to make herself small, to disappear the way she had taught herself to disappear for 6 long years. No. She heard Park Sung Hyun's voice in her head as clearly as if he were standing beside her. Your eyes are your first language. Stop asking for permission to exist. That stops today. And she straightened her spine, pulled her shoulders back, lifted her chin, and she stood in the center of the room and waited. The elevator doors opened. Michael Williams stepped out first. He looked terrible. His dark hoodie was damp. His eyes were red and wild, and there was a frantic, desperate energy coming off him that Naomi had never seen before, even at his worst. Behind him filed 4 armed men, hard-faced, tense, weapons ready. The Vega Syndicate, filling the penthouse entrance with the aggression that made the air feel suddenly thin. Michael's eyes swept the room. They found Naomi, and just like that, the wildness in his face collapsed into something that thought it was relief. Naomi. Her name in his mouth sounded like ownership, like a hand closing around something. It is over. I made a deal, and you are coming home. Right now. Naomi did not move. She did not flinch, did not blink, did not reach for her handbag or curl into herself or look at the floor. She stood exactly where she was, slim, still, and absolutely certain, and looked at Michael Williams with eyes that no longer held a single trace of fear. Look through him, she told herself. He is nothing but a wall you already walked through. Michael's relief flickered. Did you hear me? His voice hardened. I heard you, Naomi said. Her voice came out steady, low, calm. It carried across the entire room without her raising it even slightly. And something about that stillness made Michael stop mid-sentence. You spent 6 years telling me the world would swallow me whole if I ever left you, she said. She took one slow step forward. You told me I was invisible, and that I was nothing, that nobody would ever come looking for a woman like me. She looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing but a vast, quiet clarity. Look around you, Michael. Michael looked. At the penthouse, at the soldiers positioned silently around the room, at the screens, at the black glass tower 30 floors above Manhattan, at the man now stepping out of the shadows behind Naomi. Park Sung Hyun moved into the light without hurry. His black suit jacket was open, his white shirt crisp, the dragon tattoos dark against his neck and hands. He didn't look at Michael with anger. He didn't look at him with contempt. He looked at him the way a man looks at something. Very small. He raised one hand, just slightly. In a gesture so subtle it was almost nothing. The room came alive. Park Sung Hyun's soldiers moved in from every angle simultaneously. Silent, fast, and completely overwhelming. The Vega Syndicate's weapons were gone before any of them had processed the decision to resist. 4 men were on the ground in under 10 seconds. Not a single shot fired. Not a single word spoken. Michael spun around and found himself completely alone. No gang behind him, no weapons, no exit. Just himself, broad and heavy and suddenly very, very small, standing in the middle of a room full of people he could not touch. The deal, Park Sung Hyun said quietly, is over. Michael turned back to Naomi, and for the first time, she watched him do the thing he had spent 6 years making her do. He looked afraid. "You have nobody," he said. But it came out thin now, hollow, like a record playing in an empty room. "You are an orphan. These people do not care about you. The moment I am gone, they will throw you away like nothing," Naomi said softly. She took one final step toward him, close enough to look up directly into his face, and held his gaze without wavering. "You almost made me believe that," she said. "You almost made me believe that being alone meant being worthless, that having no family meant having no value." She felt something settle deep in her chest, solid and permanent, and long overdue. "But here is what you never understood, Michael. The loneliness you used to break me was the same thing that made me impossible to break, because a woman who has survived alone survives everything." Michael opened his mouth, closed it. The fight went out of his eyes like a light switching off. Two of Park Sung Hyun's men stepped forward and took Michael firmly by both arms. He didn't struggle. He didn't shout. He just deflated, like a man who had finally run out of the one thing that had always kept him going, the belief that she would always come back. "He will be handed to the FBI," Park Sung Hyun said quietly beside her. "I have federal contacts who have been building a case against him for some time. Assault, coercion, trafficking of confidential police files." He paused. "He will not walk free." Naomi watched Michael Williams be guided into the elevator. He looked back at her once, just once, as the doors began to close, and she held his gaze all the way until the doors shut completely. She didn't look away. She didn't need to anymore. And the penthouse emptied slowly, soldiers withdrawing back into the quiet precision of their positions, screens returning to their steady data streams, the city outside humming on below as if nothing had happened at all. Naomi stood at the floor-to-ceiling window. New York City glittered beneath her, enormous, relentless, indifferent to small stories and small men. 30 floors below, the streets were full of people who had no idea that tonight, in a black glass tower above their heads, a woman had finally put down the weight of 6 years and chosen herself. Park Sung Hyun came to stand beside her, not close, but present, the way he always was. They stood in silence for a long moment, both of them looking out at the city that belonged to him, and had just, in some small and permanent way, begun to belong to her too. "It does not feel the way I thought it would," Naomi said quietly. "What did you think it would feel like?" he asked. She considered that. "Louder," she said finally. "I thought the moment I was finally free, it would feel loud, like an explosion." She looked out at the lights below. "But it just feels still." Park Sung Hyun was quiet for a moment. "That is because real freedom is not an explosion," he said. "It is the moment the noise finally stops." He looked at her, and in the reflection of the dark window she could see his eyes, focused, steady, and something beneath that, something that had not been there on the train. "And the silence is yours." Naomi looked at her own reflection in the glass. The bruise was still there. The cuts were still healing. But the woman looking back at her was standing straight, shoulders back, on chin level, eyes open and unafraid. She was still here. After everything, she was still here. And for the first time in 6 years, that felt like enough. It felt like everything. Here is the lesson in this story. Fear is not power. Control is not love. And isolation is not a life sentence, unless you decide it is. The same loneliness that Michael used to break Naomi down was the very thing that made her unbreakable. Once she stopped seeing it through his eyes and started seeing it through her own. You do not need a family name, a crowd behind you, or someone else's permission to stand tall in your own life. Your past is not your prison. It is your foundation. And foundations are what you build greatness on. And if this story moved something inside you, if Naomi's journey touched your heart in any way, I want to hear from you. Kindly drop a comment below and tell me, what was the moment in this story that hit you the hardest? I read every single one. And if you enjoyed this story all the way to the end, please take just 2 seconds and hit that like button. It really costs you nothing, but it means everything to me. We are working toward 1,000 likes and 2,000 subscribers, and I want you to be part of that milestone. Every single like, every single subscription tells me one thing, that I should keep going. Keep bringing these stories like this for you. I am fully counting on you, and I promise, I will never stop showing up for you in return. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, God bless you, and I will see you in the next story.